Welcome to Unmasking the Man here on Hope Channel, an engaging and transformative men's talk show that delves into the complexities of manhood in this contemporary world, aiming to provide a platform for authentic conversations, personal growth, and spiritual insights. This, of course, is not just a show for the men, but the whole family. And if you're joining us for the very first time, remember, you can watch all these episodes of Unmasking the Man on our social media platforms. So, my name is Justus, and thank you so much for joining us. Of course, I want to introduce my panel. This is, you've met them before. This is Levi, and this is Dr. Professor, Pastor. Those are a lot of titles.
You have not finished?
Oh, sorry.
Keep
okay.
going.
So let me not introduce them. Let me allow them to introduce themselves. Let me start with you, Levi. You've introduced yourself before, but you might be having someone who is watching you for the first time.
Yeah, so very glad to be here. My name is Levi. Some people call me Levi. I answer to both. My last name is Kones. I am a father of 3 very beautiful girls, married to one extremely beautiful woman. And I'm a journalist by profession, actually a TV producer, and I'm also an author. And very glad to have this conversation and keep the ball moving.
Are you usually this calm and collected?
I warm up.
You know.
I'm like like an electric burner.
All right. We'll see. Welcome, Levi.
Asante, sir.
All right.
Thank you so much. My name is Kesis. I do many things. I preach, I teach, and in this context, I've been a dean of men at the university for at least 2 years.
Which university?
University of Eastern Africa, Baraton, and I'm also a father. Yeah, I write sometimes. Yeah. And I just like the business of men. I mean, things to do with men. I've been a man from the beginning, considering that we're in these years that we are living. It's good to be clear that I've been a man before I'm still a man.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, both of you have mentioned that you are fathers. And this episode, we are actually talking about or redefining fatherhood, so to speak. And, you know, in the process of unmasking, which is this particular show, what we have been doing here is just trying to unmask things, really unmasking things, men and manhood. We've ended up revealing or rather redefining a lot of things. And so someone could be wondering, what is there to be redefined about fatherhood? But I just want to, before we even get into that, I want to get your perspective or feedback. There's a question I want to ask to both of you. Maybe let me start with you, Levi. This question is, you are a father of 3 girls.
Yes.
What is your greatest fear as a dad?
Let me draw it from my own home.
Yeah.
I have 2 brothers, and my 2 brothers are both over 30. Both of them are unfortunately at home with their mother. Both of them are fighting addiction. And I see the anguish that goes through her eyes, because as a parent, you're expecting your children to, you know, once they get to a certain point, to sort of fly away and be independent.
Yeah.
You know? And that is my greatest fear, that I would be a parent still parenting children who have never grown when they are supposed to have grown and basically flown away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, what concerns me is if I fail my children. Yeah, if they need and I can't provide, or if I don't meet the expectations of being a father to them, because I think, I mean, they only have one father. Now, if I fail them, what is their plan B, you know? So that concept of I should be able to provide, whether it's material or guidance, you know, at least be able to, so that when they look back many years later, they should not define me in future by saying, at least he was a good father. You know, when you say at least, that means you are covering a lot. I mean, they should be able to say, we had a great dad, you know, that kind of thing. So that becomes my constant concern.
And of course, how we parent now, much of it, I believe, is drawn from our own experiences growing up and how we were fathered.
Absolutely.
You know, I just want to understand or perhaps hear from you, Levi, How was your experience growing up, and specifically, how is your relationship with your dad, and how has that come to inform or influence your parenting style?
Well, growing up for me, my father was a strict disciplinarian, and he was a man of God. He was an elder in the church. He was also a banker, and he had only one style of approaching fatherhood. It was, his way or the highway. And I think many fathers of that age were pretty much the same. In a bit, I don't really blame him. I think it's what they grew up knowing, that, the father sets the law and,
That's it.
That's it. We never laughed about anything, really. Everything was very serious. You come home, he looks at your homework. You must have a plan for your holidays, what you're going to do. And if you haven't got your grades right, that's, you get caned for it, or you get punishments. There are, timelines on how long you can stay outside. There wasn't much fun to the aspect of fatherhood. And I'm not really belittling that, because I think there is a necessity for fatherhood to have that aspect.
Yeah.
Where you actually have guidance. But it cost us a bit of friendship. I never really got to know the man. Many times as I became a teenager and I got into some vices and had some problems, I would hear stories. Oh, your dad, he used to drink, he never told me. You hear your dad, he did this or that, he never told me. He never really opened up into saying. So it kind of gave us a bit of a drift as we went on getting into adulthood. And eventually for us, there was a problem between him and my mother, and that affected all of us. So they ended up getting a divorce after about 38 years of marriage. And I've not really understood, as I sit here today, from his perspective, what really happened. I don't think we have that. We ever really got to that point where we had that kind of. It would be nice if we were able to talk now as men, for me to get to hear from him. Of course, I've gotten to hear from my mother. It's easier for women to speak. But from my dad, I wouldn't really know what would be the real insights of the backstory. Now, those are the things in my own fatherhood, I try to correct. Because I say, a man, you look at what was good and you lay a foundation on it. Like my dad prayed with us every night. That's something I do with my children. Like he provided, and he was always present, at home. He provided school fees and things like that. That's what I do with my children. But then I also go a step further and say, this aspect that I felt was disconnected, I try to connect with that. Not because I am better or more perfect, because I'm pretty sure that along the way I'm also making my own mistakes. But I also believe that we have an obligation to try and better what we got.
And that's interesting because, sometimes most of us would want to, if you go through such a situation that perhaps doesn't impact you very positively, it breaks you. So you become, the exact thing that, was a pain to you. But what I'm hearing from you is you're actually trying to, work on yourself to make sure that the things that perhaps you are not very comfortable about in terms of your relationship with dad, you perfect and make yourself even a better example to your children.
Yeah, and I am my father's son, so I am alive to that aspect.
Dr. Kesis, I would just want to perhaps get your reaction in terms of how your first experience was holding your first baby, and as you think about that, in your view, do you think a father figure is such a key aspect of a child's growth? And if so, let me just get what you think about.
When I knew I was expecting a child, I kind of got interested in stories about children and maternity. And I read about children being stolen or children being swapped, And I developed this fear that one day I may bring up a child only to discover that this was never my child. My child was actually swapped at a hospital. So the first thing I did is that I made arrangements to make sure that I actually be present the childbirth and hold the child myself, knowing this is the very child, not another one. And I followed the child from the maternity to the nursery to make sure that, yeah, I'm dealing with the right one. You know, I'd read various... I didn't want to end up dealing with some strange character. You know, the child is growing up and you're wondering, this
There's
behavior...
something about this boy.
Where does this come from? Yeah, so
how do you know the baby? Because we know babies look like babies. This
carry a felt pen. And you mark the bottom of the foot.
and tomorrow you come, you're like,
You look at
so the nurses are wondering why you are checking the foot. You know? So, you know, it's just something within our tribe, you know. Make sure you're dealing with the right child, yeah. But of course, after that children are tagged, you know,
Yes.
baby son. So there's that sense of responsibility now to realize that it's no longer just about my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you tend to see your wife as a responsible adult. So you don't worry so much because these responsible adults can manage their own affairs. But now there is this toddler, you know.
Yes.
And the first time the child sneezes and all of you go and see, is everything okay? Of course, after they grow, they sneeze and you don't care. So yeah, they will get well. But that sense of responsibility changes the perspective of things. And I think that has defined a lot. It changes a man. That's why I find it strange that there could be men who can sire children and go one way without ever coming back to see even how the child looks like, without even caring to give a name. I mean, I struggled to get a name, you know, and without even caring to know whether the child goes to school. My suspicion is that something must have happened to that man, that this man is no longer the original man that God intended. For a man to leave the child and go one way, something must have happened to the man. That's not normal. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. We've had a lot of challenges now, which I think in the present world, we can't run away from challenges and things that come our way. One being that there are families that find themselves without a father, for example. So the father figure, and father figure might not necessarily be the biological father, but in whichever setup that is. So would you think that a mother can assume the role of a father or a father figure in the absence of the father?
By the grace of God. You see, when circumstances are such that it's not possible to have a father figure, a mother can try. You know, it's like you're trying to fit in something. It may never fit 100%, but it will do the job. It's like when we have in an organization somebody in an acting capacity. Eventually the work goes on. Yeah. So that, you know, we don't get to a situation where we say that the man is dispensable. Just the fact that a woman can act as a man, or even in a situation where, let's say, a husband loses a wife, one way or the other, and the husband takes care of the children, you know, acting as a mother. That doesn't make the man a perfect mother, but it is sufficient in that situation to say that the acting position, the children don't grow up with the deficiency. Yeah, but they still need for a man, because the one who created man and woman had a purpose that we may not be able to 100% replace each other, but we can sufficiently act the role.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Levi, I think your journey, especially your parenting journey, is quite unique, being that you find yourself in what you would call a blended family, so to speak. You know, coming into your marriage, you know, finding your wife already with, you know, children, 2 girls. Share with us briefly about your experience, parenting experience, and what these dynamics have really brought about in your own growth and personal, you know, understanding of just fatherhood, so to speak.
Well, I think I like to say we are a sum total of the experiences that we have had in life, and they really feed into what happens with us. You know, some years ago, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, I was working at a children's charity home in Eldoret. And I began working there by accident, actually, because it was one of those things where you don't have a job and you're in Nairobi and somebody says, well, will you drive some missionaries? They have come from, from the US. They're setting up a home in Eldoret. And I drove them to Eldoret, and, along the way, discussions, talks, so we are starting this home, we need someone, blah, blah, blah. I ended up, working there for about 4 or 5 years. That experience would not have
counted for much.
But it actually was the footstool on which I was able to actually think or even conceive the idea of having a relationship with a woman I met who had been widowed and had 2 children. Previously, before that, I would not have been that guy. So I think that meeting with children, because I interacted with children. Most of the children at our children's home at that point in time had no parents. Some of them were out of single mother homes, but the mothers were not able to provide for them, so they were brought there. And you could see it actually opened me to the reality that children are children. Once the dynamics of what, who, where, which from, these are all adult issues. For children, you take a child here with no parents, a child with parents, you put them in the same room, they look at each other funny for 2 seconds, the next moment they are out there, rambling in the sand, and calling each other best friends. They don't have, we are the ones who teach the divisions.
Yeah.
So when I met my wife at a point in time when I had just come from what I thought would have been the relationship that would have led to marriage, and things did not work out. And my wife had lost her husband 2 years prior to that. And we started having a discussion. And right from the beginning when I met her, I was talking to her, actually. And I told her, oh, you look like you're a very beautiful woman. And she said, you know what? I'm a mother with 2 kids. Those were her first statements. She told me, I'm not a... I think she used it most times to make people, make a U-turn. Because most men will hear that, they're like, hey.
It's a vetting process.
If you're not serious,
if you're not serious, don't do this. And the dating process was quite interesting because I didn't get to meet her children for a while, and when I did, and I got to know them, and I began to see them as my children. Even before I proposed to their mother, I talked to my eldest daughter, and I told her, you know what, I'm thinking of, and she said, yeah, I can see that. At that point, she was 11 years old. She's now 23. And I'll tell you, the journey has been interesting and much of a learning process. First, of course, I had to fight a lot of culture expectations. I was then a single guy. Where I come from, you're expected to be the one, and I'm the eldest in my home, and I'm the eldest grandson of my grandfather. My grandfather, God rest his soul, was so livid with that idea, It was difficult getting people to come to the wedding arrangements. I had to get an uncle to step in for me because my dad wouldn't come. And when he finally came to the wedding, he didn't want to speak. It was not an easy journey. And for the two of us, of course, thrust together, here I am, I've become an instant parent. My wife was used to doing things a certain way for her and her children. We had to try and mesh that, and sometimes that brought a little bit of difficulty. The biggest issue, of course, was discipline. You want to discipline children, but you do not want to look like the stepfather guy. Coming in so harsh and
it's like you are unfair. You are too hard on them.
Yes. And especially when we got a baby ourselves, because sometimes I noticed like one of my children had a tendency to come and ask me for something using the last born. Until I had to sit her down and say, you know what, it doesn't make your case better.
Yes.
Just come and ask. You have as much right, as the one below you. So there are certain things you think about even when you're parenting, like when it comes to schools, you play it the same way. When it comes to whether somebody, there's a big debate in my house right now about a phone. My 14-year-old wants a phone, not just a phone. She wants an iPhone.
Okay.
And, and I think that's replicative of many parents. Now, and I personally know, I was like, hey, I don't have an iPhone, but But her elder sister, we did not give her a phone until, she was 18. So I told her, this rule in this house, this one doesn't change. It doesn't get. She said, times have changed. I'm like, but the house hasn't. See, you have to play the same way. And my wife has been very helpful in enabling us to discipline from the very onset. We agreed. If you don't get something from mom, dad is not going to change for you.
Which is very important.
Yeah?
Very good.
If you don't get something from dad, mom is not going to change for you. We are a unit. You don't play us.
And kids are can be very manipulative.
Very manipulative. They can always do those things. And the learning curve continues, because I say with parenting and getting to, no one has the one size fit all aspect. And no particular approach works for everybody.
Yeah.
So you have to find the one that fits your style. And you always have to also constantly keep on educating yourself, understanding your children, because even children, even in themselves, growing up in the same home, they are all very different.
Yeah.
They are all looking at life in a very different manner. They all react to issues, whether you are supporting something they are doing or telling them this cannot be done, in a very different manner. So for me, it's a good experience. I think it's a God experience, because the way we fitted in, it's like they've always been there. Wow. In fact, I look back and I say, God gave me a training for this particular role and made those children present for me at this particular time.
Wow.
And that's the beauty of it.
It is a beauty to behold, really. And, the struggle I have personally seen or experienced is, we as men, there's hardly a platform or an environment that subjects us to some of these processes that can help us to grow into men who can become fathers and responsible fathers at it. I'm just wondering, Pastor, from where you come from, as a church, what is the responsibility that the church has in grooming men into becoming responsible fathers? Because these cases are not just outside there, even within the church.
That's true.
We've had a lot of cases, I believe, brought to your attention of people who just the other day were, calling each other very sweet names and all that kind of things, but it's no more. Absentee fathers within the church.
Deadbeat fathers.
Deadbeat.
Yeah, maybe I look at it in two ways. Number one, God put in us a software that is triggered when you become a father, when you are responsible. Even if, let's say, a relative brought you a child and you are not married and said, hey, this relative is quite unwell or has died, take care of this child. There's something that's triggered in you. What that tells me is that God has put in us a software to be fathers and even to be mothers. It's like a mother starts suckling and the milk comes and becomes a mother. So that's number one. So what we need to pray for is we become what God has wanted us to be, because he has planted in us. Number two, the church, of course, has ministries like Family Life Ministries, Adventist Ministries. These are ministries that, if they properly function in the local church, they become the bed where there is development of men, shifting men into fathers and setting standards. Human beings want standard where you try to reach it, But if you don't set the standard and everyone is going anyhow, sometimes you have these deadbeat characters, maybe people who can't handle the pressure that comes with marriage, so they take off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What would be your parting shot in terms of, speak to someone, who has been conflicted in the past as a father, and having listened to us this day, they are beginning to warm up to the idea that perhaps they can do better. Where should they start? Now,
Harry Truman said, the time is always right to do what is right. There is, the moment you are convicted of something, you can begin to walk back the path. So you've been a deadbeat dad, so you have not, handled your obligations well, so things have not gone the way you wanted them to do. The moment you feel that you are convicted, you can begin to walk that back. And you can start with the simple things. The fact that you can actually have conviction is already a very good testament that you're already in the process of becoming a good man, because bad men don't get convicted, you know. And nothing happens by chance. The fact that we are talking here and somebody may be feeling, maybe I can do a little bit better, is a sign that God himself has used even a conversation like this to move and touch you, so that, and even make you alive to a process that you need to do. So what do? You look at yourself and see where do you start from. Sometimes if you don't have money to do your parental obligations, you can begin with your presence. You know, children still need present fathers. Even as you look at provision, too much emphasis is put on the money aspect and what have you done financially, that it makes men who have no money going for them, or they've lost a job, feel like now they have lost their fatherhood. No, you haven't lost your fatherhood because you've lost you've lost your job, you don't have an income. With money, it's a seesaw. Right. We have today, tomorrow we don't have, the following day we have. So start somewhere, be present for your child, begin to be there, get into a good place, and I would especially encourage men, find a church, a place, a man's congregation that gives you positive vibes, because I know we'll talk later about the ones that give, you know, the negative ones, that can help you grow. Because for you to grow, you must surround yourself with also men who are also in the process of growing themselves, and they can impart good knowledge to you.
You are just like a seed. If you plant, the whole tree is in you. So that fatherhood, being a great father, is in you. Just seek divine help. And of course, God has put human beings around us who can help us. It is in us. Yeah, we just need to get it, and God will provide it. And this is the beginning. That's why we are here, to make sure that that which is in you can come out.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's been quite a good conversation we've had, I believe.
Yeah, see, we warm up.
Yeah, you do. Slowly but sure. Wow, so as we draw this meaningful conversation to an end about fatherhood, I think, and I hope that the gains that we have been able to ably talk about, the things that you can be able to start doing, however small they might sound, would really have a lasting impact in your relationship with your child as a father. And we're not just talking about fathers, really, because everything that affects fatherhood affects the rest of the family.
Yeah, the rest.
Yeah. So thank you so much for all that have been able to join us, and we hope to see you again in the next episode of Unmasking the Man. I've been your host, Justus. God bless.